Answers to some questions and some experiences in training in awareness. Question: talking about not clinging, when somebody who is used to saying whatever he or she likes, gets angry and abuses someone, they let go and feel all right. It seems as if such a person doesn't feel troubled about it. But in fact there is a kind of clinging, isn't there? Luangpor Teean, in such a case, one is completely overwhelmed by defilements, that is not letting go. Rather, the defilements are satisfied, having eaten to their heart's content. Question: but they don't have any suffering, it doesn't make them feel uncomfortable. Luangpor: defilements get to a point where they are full. Swearing at someone makes one feel good, right? Question: sometimes we do things that are not so good, like being angry and reacting in a heavy way, but if we don't think about it we feel all right. Others, who are good people with ideals, usually think about their actions. Is that good or bad? Thinking about one's actions is more suffering than not thinking about them. Luangpor: it is good because one looks after one's virtue. There is still suffering, but one recognizes the difference between one's own and another's goodness and badness. One knows what the results of different actions are, because one reflects on them, stepping into other people's shoes. Then, one should learn to let go and take the experience as a lesson, the good ones as well as the bad ones. Question: I've heard a monk say that a practitioner is like someone who learns to drive a car. At first it's awkward and quite difficult. Luangpor: it's like that. Learning to ride a bicycle is the same. At first it's hard to keep in balance. Sometimes you want to make a right turn but instead you make a left. Or you see an obstacle in front of you and you try to avoid it, but you run right into it. It takes a lot of sweating and quite some time, before you find your balance. But what's it like when you've trained yourself? Easy, everything is automatic, no matter where you go you're fluent and skilled. Question: it's really hard to train like that? Isn't it better to not train at all? Luangpor: well, then you can't ride. If we don't train our minds we will be servants of circumstances and desires. This will make one go up and down throughout one's life. Question: what was your experience like when you first set out to practice? Did you have obstacles or was it easy? Luangpor: oh, it was really awkward and difficult. At first, I felt very uncomfortable and fed up. Why do I have to sit here and practice like this? The mind was raising objections like this all the time. But I challenged myself and kept on training. When I had trained myself more and had fixed on awareness more continuously, the mind's arguing began to diminish. There was more awareness and it was more continuous. After that, I found the way. When awareness became awakened, I really found the way. I saw Rupa and Nama. I saw the three characteristics, I saw the states of the body and the mind arising. My life during that period was nourished with joy. The mind didn't wander, there was really clear awareness that was independent. But at first, it was a real hassle, I had to put a lot of effort into it, and I felt uneasy and burdened. Actually, I've trained in the method of using the mantra, Bhudo before. I practiced with that until I was skilled at it. But I still got angry, I couldn't deal with suffering. When I trained in developing awareness it was very hard in the beginning, because there was still opposition in the mind. However, when I continued to make effort and awareness became crystal clear, I got to know that this method is actually not difficult and bears lots of fruit. Afterwards I felt that the method of mantra recitation is much more difficult. Question: how do you mean more difficult? Do you mean that there is more opportunity for the mind to wander off? Luangpor: no. When I trained at Bhudo, I was just beginning. But when I could do it I felt that I was still stuck, I was still besieged with agitation and worry. Later, when I switched to this method it was easier than the recitation method. I'm somebody who likes to train himself, and so I didn't have to force myself a lot. I had confidence in learning from my experiences. Never mind if others don't do it, but I have to be able to train myself, and do what is right. This is how I thought at first, and this spirit backed me up all the way. I once asked Luangpor Teean, "Since when have you been practicing like this?" He said, "I was 45 at the time. Myself, I was 30 years old, and so I challenged myself thinking, people's abilities probably don't differ that much." I further asked him, "Are there any people who have developed awareness with you, and didn't get any insight?" Luangpor Teean said, "No, there aren't." And so I had confidence and didn't think about it a lot. I determined to put forth effort by being aware through walking meditation, and knowing the postures in a continuous way. I didn't have much time, to sit and ask questions like you have. I didn't use the method of looking for information. Actually, I did have questions, but I used to learn from experiences more. In those days, Luangpor Teean taught to be aware through using the rhythmic meditation. Be aware simply like this. No, like this. He instructed to really do it, and he didn't sit around to explain a lot of questions as you're doing these days. He just presented the method, in order that we go ahead and practice it. Only once in a long time would he drop by to check on you. At one time he asked, "How is it going?" I answered, "Nothing is going, nothing is happening." He disappeared. The next day he came again and advised, "Don't think about this and that, just be aware, fix on awareness. See the movements of the body, do it continuously." He would only say a few words. He came to give me advice for some days. Some days he would come and talk. Some days he would show me things. Sometimes I didn't yet understand his advice, but I determined to continuously put forth effort. I tried to continuously be aware of the postures. Sometimes I would be aware, sometimes I would lose it, alternating from one to the other. It took me a full month to understand the state that Luangpor Teean was talking about. When sati became prominent, awareness was awakened and established. It felt like I had really found the path of life. I wasted a lot of time because I was attached to my old way of practicing. My mind used to be still and peaceful when reciting the word Bhud though. It was cool and comfortable. I was stuck. I thought that that way was better than this way of developing awareness. I remember that many people went to practice with Luangpor Teean, and they would practice intensively for a week or two and got results. But it took me a full month because I had views and opinions. Question: I once trained myself doing walking meditation and rhythmic meditation, but after a while I returned to watching the breath at the same time, because I have trained in anapanasati, awareness of breathing before. Luangpor: sometimes it happens like that. It's ordinary because one has a familiarity from the past. Question: right. As soon as I try to not watch the breath, and concentrate on the hands at every movement, I get a headache. Luangpor: that's no good. Question: is it possible to use the same principles, of developing awareness that Luangpor Teean teaches, with watching the breath? Luangpor: I tried that out and applied it, when I first set out to develop awareness. Having done anapanasati, awareness was not clear, not the same as establishing awareness this way. Awareness of movements of the body in the various postures is very clear. And it is easier to focus on. Sati stands out. One really becomes awake. After the mind has been established and awakened, one is able to acknowledge with continuous awareness both the refined movements of the breath, the movements of the body, in both the coarse and the refined postures, as well as being able to use a mantra in practicing. There is no problem at all. No matter how subtle the breath may be, one sees the movements clearly because one's mind is awakened and is well cultivated, having learned how to focus on and establish awareness. In 1975, I followed Luangpor Teean to Wat Chonla Pertan, near Bangkok. The abbot, Jaukun Panyananda, entrusted us with the training of all the young monks in meditation. That year Venerable Kemananda, now a lay teacher, spent the rains retreat there too. He also taught meditation, so we divided the task up between us. Venerable Khemananda taught Anapanasati, as is taught by his teacher Ajahn Buddhadasa. Luangpor Teean and myself taught the development of awareness using the rhythmic and walking meditation. At that time Venerable Khemananda didn't yet understand Luangpor Teean. After the first month of the rains, 3 newly ordained monks asked to change and come and train to develop awareness with Luangpor Teean. They sneaked away from Venerable Khemananda. Luangpor Teean instructed them. Those 3 monks were very determined. They managed to focus on awareness and make it stand out. This gave rise to joy and confidence, and they invited their friends to give it a try too. Venerable Khemananda got to know about this. He was surprised that the young monks were so serious about developing awareness, and so he came to check it out and ask some questions. In the end, Venerable Khemananda tried Luangpor Teean's method to develop awareness, and was satisfied with the changes that took place in his mind. Since 1975, Venerable Khemananda has been an important teacher, helping to train and teach the cultivation of awareness according to the teachings of Luangpor Teean. He has also helped to spread the teachings, and come to an understanding with scientists and young people, at all sorts of teaching institutions about cultivating one's own mind. As a result, government officials and young students have come to try developing awareness more and more. Question: how can we solve the problem of wanting to follow the breath and watching movements at the same time? I find that this is really hard to do. Luangpor: well, one has to be diligent in aiming for awareness. Make yourself comfortable and try to be aware. You don't need to make all-out efforts or force yourself. When you lose awareness while watching the breath, then let go at first. Never mind if the mind goes off sometimes. On realizing that your mind has wandered off, you come back again to a new moment of awareness, and, so doing, you put down the thought or object that made you lose awareness. Train to bring up awareness. Do it at ease. Don't go and force yourself, wanting things to be like this or that, because the more you force yourself the more the mind thinks and goes into turmoil. Be aware continuously. When you have awakened awareness, the wandering of the mind will disappear by itself. Question: in watching the movements, do we have to see the various postures at each moment? Luangpor: there is no need to determine to see the various postures. Just train to be more and more aware, and when awareness becomes awakened, this awakeness of the mind will see the various postures more clearly by itself. Question: at first, I tried to watch the movements with every move, in an intensive way. Luangpor: that's not the way to do it. Just train to bring up more awareness, making it more continuous. However you move, let the mind be aware of it, see the process of moving continuously. When your mind starts to think of this and that, or some mood arises, don't get annoyed or try to stop it, don't be interested in what's happening, rather, turn back to being aware, wake up awareness. First, train in establishing awareness. When awareness is awake and established, it will be easy to see thought, and to keep up with the arising moods, not being caught up in them. Awareness will be clear and it will happen by itself. Question: when I first tried, I tried to concentrate in order to not follow or think anything else. Luangpor: don't concentrate, it will give you a headache. Question: from your experience, do you find that focusing on the breath gives good results? Luangpor: there are good results when one does it in the right way. Question: but I doubt whether there will be progress or not. As far as I have practiced, there was peace but no more than that. I'm still as caught in moods as I was before. Luangpor: peace is samatha, it is just the basic stage. It is a state of mind. In developing awareness, one doesn't get peaceful, not that kind of peace. When awareness is awakened, it turns into Vipassana. It is wisdom knowledge, it sees the body and the mind. The walking meditation and the rhythmic meditation, moving the arms about, is a method, it is an exercise to focus on awareness. We take the movements of the body to be a sign, nimitta, and a base. It is the foundation for waking up sati, and making it continuous. When we have established awareness, we will see what's going on in the body and the mind as it is. Just the awakeness of the mind, the state of having sati sampajanya, that is completely awake, is enough to bring happiness and normality to your life. The result of awakened awareness is wisdom knowledge. This means to see all things as they actually are in reality. The kind of seeing that is important to guide life, to the overcoming of suffering and all kinds of dis-ease and dissatisfaction, is to see thought and views, to see the process of proliferation in oneself. We see this, and we are really faced with suffering. We really see the states, characteristics, and the arising and passing in our minds. It is a seeing through sati sampajanya, that is established and awakened. No matter what state or condition we see, we can abandon it. We abandon things in stages, for example various views and opinions. We really see these things. Question: does this mean that training in anapanasati cannot lead to insight? Luangpor: it can. If we don't wallow in watching the breath until we become peaceful. Train in watching the breath with sati, being aware of it. Whether you're watching the long or the short breath, watch with awareness. Awaken awareness and remember that you focus on the breath in order to arouse sati, and train the mind to have recollection, and awareness that is more awake, not to let yourself follow and be caught up in the passing thoughts and moods. We develop awareness in order to live our lives with awareness. We depend on awareness and awakeness to work with the mind. To see thought, to see one's various views and opinions. We see it so that we can diminish them, abandon them, let go of thoughts, and put down various moods that we used to be deluded by. And so we must be careful that we don't train the mind for any other purpose. Question: there is a book of Ajahn Buddhadasa, which teaches not to train in anapanasati just to make the mind peaceful, but in order to see rupa nama and the three characteristics. Luangpor: right. He teaches to reflect on the three characteristics and see one's mind, to see what's happening in one's life. He doesn't teach people to get stuck in peacefulness. Peace and coolness are very delicious, I have been addicted to it. It's like drugs. The trained mind is cool and still. I certainly was immersed in those states. When I went to work on the fields, I wanted it to be evening quickly, so I could go back home and practice meditation in my room. I would make the mind peaceful. I was really attached to it. Question: I used to practice mindfulness with breathing, but I only got as far as peacefulness, I didn't know what to do next. Luangpor: there are two kinds of peace, one is stillness, the mind is peaceful and secluded, but the other kind is peace because we have sati sampajanya, and are awake. Moods and thoughts cannot enter and become powerful in our minds. Life is free from complexity and turmoil. This is peace due to our ability to establish awareness. We don't let the mind think and proliferate following thoughts, beliefs, and desires that we are familiar with. We know how to allay ourselves from delusions, attachments, and conceits. This latter kind of peace is therefore the kind of peace that can be used. It should be developed, one should train to have and be it. One should practice to keep up with one's mind more. In your case, you have practiced anapanasati before, so just continue with it, but be careful. Don't immerse yourself in concentrating until you get stuck on peace and calm. Try to practice with awareness and awakeness. See the movements of the breath more and more clearly together with the mind waking up more and more. The breath is one thing, that which sees the breath is another thing, something that stands out. When intuitive awareness, sati sampajanya, is awakened, the seeing or knowing of thoughts in time with their arising, will happen by itself. Question: what I did before was to follow the breath. Sometimes the mind would think of other matters, and as soon as I realized that I lost it, I would come back to the breath. Sometimes peace would arise after a while. Luangpor: all right. Next time, as soon as you realize that you're getting peaceful, change your posture. Try to wake yourself up and watch the breath again. Or you change to focusing on a more coarse posture such as walking. You have to try to arouse awareness, don't just let it stop with the arising peacefulness. Question: sometimes when there is peace, the mind dives down and it is hard to pull it away, awareness is all gone. Luangpor: yes, that is an obstacle. You should change the posture, get up and do this, do that. Rub your face, rub your body. Make sure that you wake up and bring back awareness. Question: as we're practicing, a lot of thoughts that we don't intend to think tend to come up, and the mind jumps around like a monkey. When we have practiced with awareness, does that kind of thinking stop altogether? Luangpor: if awareness really sees it, it will stop. When one is aware and awake, it will really stop. But when starting off to train, we have to have a sign to exercise with. What is recommended are the movements of the body. They are the base for establishing awareness. When we first start off, we shouldn't immediately concentrate on or watch our own thoughts and moods. That is being too hasty. When we have a sign to help us focus on awareness, such as the breath, the postures or movements, we have a way to exercise. We can see the states, conditions, and movements of the breath and of the body. Determine to be aware continuously. As soon as your mind thinks of something, know abreast of it. When you're careless and thought arises, as soon as you realize it, those thoughts will stop, they won't go on. We still do our main duty, that is to say, we continue being aware. Train yourself like this when you begin to practice. Establish awareness and make yourself able to awaken it. Question: but a lot of times we are still restless, which means that there is often a lack of awareness. The mind likes to think about the same old things, the thoughts that we've stopped many times. Luangpor: that's ordinary, we're still absorbed with those matters. We've been immersed in those things for a long time. We didn't use awareness and wisdom to reflect on the various problems, and so that's the way it is. Never mind. It's natural for the mind to wander. Realize it and come back. Come back to being aware again. No matter how many times you lose it, it doesn't matter. When we're more skilled and we can arouse awareness to be more awake and more clear, the jumping around of the mind will vanish by itself. So determine to train yourself. Question: but Luangpor, just to know abreast of thought is not enough. It won't be long and one forgets oneself, and new thoughts will arise, more proliferation. It goes on incessantly, going round and round in circles. Luangpor: when we're determined to put forth effort and train to focus on awareness, we will know abreast of objects and thoughts more often. We clarify awareness, we know when we lose awareness. This knowing will mature into a sense of being awake that stands out. It is not like the sleepy kind of awareness that we used to have, sometimes knowing, sometimes not knowing. Our lives are carried away by mental objects, but we begin to realize it, we cultivate awareness and we become more awake. We can part with the whirlpool of thoughts and desires. We gradually get more skilled at doing that. In the end, our recollection and awareness will be awakened and established, that is the foundation of awareness, satipatthana. One sees the body, the mind, and the movements of various things as they really are. The seeing develops until it becomes the great foundation of awareness. That's what happens finally. But before we mature up to that point, we first have to face obstacles, and train to understand and go past them. Question: when we know abreast of the various thoughts, they stop by themselves, is that right? Luangpor: right. The stream of confusing and chaotic thoughts will stop because of this very awareness. Question: it has been said that by just knowing, defilements shrink up, that is to say, if we are aware, defilements will stop. I don't understand how this works. Luangpor: sati has power, its function is to know thoughts and all kinds of desires. It is like a boxer, every time that there is realization, it conquers. Originally, we let the mind go where it wants, however it thinks, whatever it wants to possess and be, We follow all these things with our thoughts. It is a habit and not a clever one. To realize that we are really caught up in thinking and dreaming, only being interested in our own minds, comes to a point in our lives where we have a nasty problem, suffering arises and we feel heavily burdened and tense. Then, we go and train ourselves, we develop awareness. We turn away from the world of thought that we were so familiar with and absorbed in. We train until we are skilled in awareness and we are awake. The world of thought that used to be so real and serious, starts to dissolve. Feelings of anger, dissatisfaction, jealousy, feeling fed up or whatever feelings that used to be powerful, begin to disintegrate at the moment that we know how to establish awareness. This is because we turn our minds away from the way we used to use it, for unwise thinking according to our wants. Question: if the fruits of training the mind in Buddhism are as high as that, then why do many meditation centers still teach concentration, in order to become peaceful and pacify defilements by holding them down, which is a way of practice that is very well known? Luangpor: it is taught because peace, and knowing how to suppress one's defilements and craving, not disturbing others, is a good thing. But we should realize that it is not enough, because it cannot solve the problem of suffering. Defilements and craving still exist, still arise. The mind is still hot. We can suppress them, but when they have too much strength, lots of problems will ensue. To sum up, the kind of samadhi where one sits still and in peace, is a good thing, but it is not enough, if we wish to truly bring about a change in our lives. Question: do the words following thought, with knowing, and knowing thought, mean the same thing or not? Luangpor: there is a difference. Following thought means to watch it by going after it. The mind thinks of something, and proliferates into likes and dislikes and so on, and we follow those thoughts, we know the picture. Question: you mean one follows thought and gets stuck, and caught up in it? Luangpor: that's right. We think about some matter and we follow those stories. What fun that is! The more one watches, the more one thinks. The more one thinks, the more one is caught up. One watches and watches, but one is under the power of those thoughts. Or one watches and sees, but is not able to bring those thoughts to a halt. Focusing on, knowing thought, on the other hand, means that we know abreast of the mind, as soon as it thinks up something. Oh, thinking again. One knows in time, but one doesn't intend to follow anything. One keeps on being aware. Whatever kind of work we do, we continue being aware with the work we do. We're not interested in following thoughts and moods. We take our work and our posture as the important principle. As for watching and following thought, if awareness is not well established, it will be difficult to step out of what we're watching. But the method to establish awareness and waking up, will make the mind see by itself. It will clearly see the stream of proliferating thought and one's own desires. On seeing it, one really lets go. Question: I've read in a book to follow thought. Luangpor: actually, it might mean what I've explained, but they express it in another way. Question: I still don't understand how we can watch our own thoughts, because as soon as we watch thought, it stops. Luangpor: it's like this. I once taught an old monk. He was determined to practice, and said he would stick with me indefinitely. A few days later, after the meal, he brought his bowl and shoulder bag out, and took leave of me. I asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going back home." I said, "What is it that has led you to come and say goodbye to me?" He answered, "Thought. Thoughts are saying that I should go home." I then said to him, "A few days ago you asked to stay with me indefinitely, and today you want to go back already. Do you see it, how thought deceives? Is it true or not? One moment it makes you come, and the next it makes you go. Are you going to follow everything thought tells you?" The old monk put his things down, and after a while he said, "It's true, I really follow what thought says." As soon as he regained his awareness, he went back to his hut and continued to practice. Do you see what I mean? This is the result of following one's thoughts. One completely loses one's direction. Question: when the old monk came, he, also, followed his thoughts, that is, he came because of desire, is that so? Luangpor: yes, he came out of desire, but having come, I instructed him to be aware and keep up with thought. Sometimes desire is a good thing, sometimes it is bad, it can be both, so know it in time. Know in time your desires to come and go. Don't be careless and get fooled easily. Train in awareness. Otherwise you will lose your way, going with your thoughts. Don't be carried away by them. Question: what do the four great foundations of awareness consist of? Luangpor: the word great, maha, means so much, that it is more than you can use. A millionaire wouldn't use it up in his or her entire life. It is an enormous amount. According to the scriptures there are four foundations of awareness, namely, the foundation of the body, of feelings, of mind states, and of mental objects. But when we talk in terms of practice, we can summarize these, as training to establish and awaken sati sampajanya, to see the body and the mind as they really are. The body is rupa, see the movements of it. Be fully aware, awake, and ready. No matter what state or condition the body is in, our minds see and realize it clearly. As for feelings, mind states, and mental objects, it all boils down to thought. See these things at their source, at their cause, namely at the mind, at the movements of thought. And so the genuine principles of practice urge us to start off with the body. We take the body to be assigned to train in awareness. We take the postures and work as our base for training in awareness. This is the beginning of the training. This is called working with the body. The main objectives are to be experienced in living and being with intuitive awareness, to know how to establish awareness in daily life, and to wake up to reality. We used to drift along and be fooled by all kinds of thoughts and desires, and now we change and turn into one who is aware and awake on a regular basis. Whatever kind of work you do, know how to use awareness and focus with awareness. At first we must put forth quite a bit of effort, because we go against the stream of thought and old habits to indulge. The Buddha therefore advised to train and establish awareness first. No matter how we lose awareness, when we realize it, be aware of your body, the posture, or the movements. Take this as your standard. Don't let yourself drift along with thoughts and moods that sneak in. They will make you fed up and irresolute. Whatever you're thinking, know how to put things down and return to your main job, to be the one who is aware. Train to be the one who knows how to put down thoughts and moods that you're familiar with and used to be absorbed in. Be the one who knows how to use awareness and is in control of it most of the time. Train and practice at ease, don't expect to get knowledge or anything else whatsoever. The results of training to work with the body like this, will make you skilled at knowing your own moods in time. You will know how to establish awareness, and you will know how to put down thoughts and moods that are sullying your mind. As we know how to awaken and establish sati sampajanya, we begin to become more independent than before, when we used to be sullied by moods. We used to be too soft or too heavy, etc., but now we begin to become more composed, and the mind gets more refined. We see things according to reality, we see our own body, mind, moods, and thoughts, really knowing abreast of them. Oh, I think like this, I have these beliefs, these intentions. There is as much anger as this, I get deluded to this extent. We see our own mind states, moods, thoughts, and beliefs in a really fair light. It is a straightforward kind of seeing, that comes from the awakened mind. Our meditation shifts from the level of focusing on the body, to the level of working with the mind. Seeing the various states and conditions, seeing the mind in the mind, seeing the stream of thought, and our own beliefs and desires, according to our habits in a straightforward way, gives rise to wisdom knowledge. One knows oneself, one knows how to unbind, one knows how to put down views and opinions. We drop all those things we think, are attached to and cling to, in a way that we had never thought of and had never seen before. We put things down and abandon things, depending on the wisdom knowledge of seeing the mind in the mind. This makes us able to release ourselves from objects of mind, and alleviate old character tendencies. Our lives become more awakened and free, there is more awareness in our daily lives, we gradually integrate it. Question: in using awareness in daily life, when we need to think about something, how does awareness help with that? Or do the thoughts just stop? Luangpor: the kind of thoughts that arise by themselves are called stealthy thoughts. Our desires to have things go one way, or another push them into being. One is absorbed in them and forgets oneself. It is thought that dashes up from wants. When we are aware, the stream of this kind of thinking will come to a standstill. As for the intention to think about something, we use reflection with awareness. For example, yesterday I had many things to do, and I had to consider what to do first. This is intentional thinking, using awareness. And so thinking that arises on its own, and, intentionally, making use of thought like this are two different things with different causes. Thought that arises on its own is something that should be known. In living and working and so on, we should know how to use recollection and awareness, in deciding what is appropriate and what is not. Having considered something, that's the end of it. Therefore, someone who is experienced in establishing awareness, and is in control of awareness in his or her life, is able to use the power of mind, and the power of thought in an unrestricted way. Such a person is really able to reflect and enjoy his or her life and work. An interview with Luangpor. Question: I would like to ask how long it took you for a change to take place in your mind, when you first set out to practice with Luangpor Teean. Luangpor: 1 month. I was still a layman then. The first 10 days I didn't know anything yet. Some people said that just 7 days was sufficient to know Rupanama. A novice came to ask me, why don't you understand yet? I just practiced for a week and I understood Rupanama. I didn't feel so good about that. I asked Luangpor Teean about it, is there anybody who has practiced with you who didn't get any knowledge? Luangpor Teean answered, no, there isn't. I guess I must be the first one then, I said. That's what I thought, I felt inferior. But when I had practiced for nearly a month, I understood the basic stage. I caught on. I knew Rupa and Nama, I knew the body, I knew the mind. The body or the mind didn't fool me. Now I knew the direction and I felt confident. Question: at that time were you doing the rhythmic or walking meditation? Luangpor: when I came to know, I was doing walking meditation. When I started out to practice I didn't sit much, it made me sleepy. I walked more. I avoided sitting. In the beginning I couldn't sit much. Sometimes it would rain and I would walk with an umbrella, because I'd be sleepy, sitting. Question: how long after that did the second change take place? Luangpor: when I knew Rupanama, it wasn't just that much, but it was as if there was a spiritual power, as if I didn't do anything, I just watched and knowledge would arise. There was knowing and knowing, continuous knowing. I knew liberation in stages. I intuitively knew what was right and wrong. I thought to have a debate with Luangpor Teean. If he would not accept what was right, for example if he would not approve of my seeing Rupanama, I would insist. I was confident. I knew convention, merit, and demerit. Something had dropped off the mind but I had to train more. When I came back here, I ordained and continued to practice. I came to know Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, virtue, firmness of mind, and wisdom. I realized that after I got it. I think that I knew the direction to go in since the first year, but I hadn't practiced all the way yet. It was as if everything was ready except that I hadn't done it yet. In the third year, I really came to understanding, I got the answers to life. At the time, I didn't know or imagine that I got there. Question: that was the final change, in your third year, was it? Luangpor: yes, that's right. Question: what was it like during that period? Luangpor: I don't know how to describe it. Things that used to be there disappeared, both physical and mental things. Things that had never been there appeared. I'm not claiming that I am an arahant, fully enlightened one, but a change took place in my life, something that has never happened before. For example, attachment to the body is finished. That which has arisen I can use up to this day, it is not wrong. The things I used to identify with, I no longer identify with, it is completely finished. Question: what about the knowledge you used to have about magical charms, verses and spells? Luangpor: that's all finished, finished since the beginning, since I knew Rupanama and convention. The identification with being a good person, someone who knows a lot about superstition, is finished altogether. There is nothing to doubt about. Since that day, I'm not stuck, not attached to ceremonies, rituals, and so on. Before, I used to be deluded by convention. Now, there is not a trace of delusion left. When I went home I was a different person, it was like being born anew. Previously, when I was at home, I would tie white string around the wrists of my relatives and friends, I would do this and that. But now, I've stopped, I won't do it anymore. One ought to believe what one can experience for oneself, we are the owners of our actions, comma. I told my parents and relatives to quit all the superstition. Question: did you sit or walk, that final time? Luangpor: it happened after the meal, I was sitting. Question: it was in the morning then? Luangpor: right, I was doing the rhythmic meditation leaning against a small tree. Question: where was it? Luangpor: at the Budayana forest. That day, it was getting close to the time to have the midday meal. After the meal, all the monks got up and left, but Luangpor Teean and I were still there. Luangpor Teean asked me why I didn't get up too. I told him my experience. He said, "You're stupid, when things are separated like that, come back here. Come back to awareness." He looked at me and said, "Do it again." So, teachers are necessary when one is not skilled. Because of this, I would like to say that Luangpor Teean was the teacher, the one who gave birth to awareness and wisdom. Nobody had ever taught me this, other people only teach and know other things. Question: what was the first thing you thought of, after you had put things down or had been liberated? Luangpor: I thought of my father and mother. That it is natural for parents to raise their children. That people are willing to go through a lot of difficulties and suffering precisely, so that those who are born may come to know this thing. I thought that if people can actually get to know this, then it can be taken that there has been a purpose, to the naturally created world. Parents who raise children do so for this very reason. If a child doesn't get to know this point, then it will have to be reborn. That was what I was thinking, that one is born in order not to be born again. I felt that whatever Luangpor Teean would want me to do, I would oblige and have confidence in him. And so I went to ask him, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "If the state that arose is real, then help me to teach, help me to talk, teaching people, other than that there isn't anything to do." Question: when you were thinking of your parents, did you feel like helping them? Luangpor: I did. As soon as I had this knowledge, my mother was the first person I went to see. I urged her to come and stay at the monastery, but she said that she couldn't stay at a place that is a charnel ground. And so I searched for somebody to keep her company. The mother of a fellow monk and relative was willing to go. I also induced the head man of the village to train himself, thinking that they would realize what I had realized. But when I taught them, they didn't get results. At first I wanted all people to be under my guidance, I wanted to teach everybody because everybody has the same potential. The duty of us human beings, is to come to this point, it is a path in itself. To go in any other direction is not right. I still hold my mother to be the most important person. I will continue teaching her until I die. These days I still try to teach her. If I didn't have a mother, I probably wouldn't be here. Question: How old is your mother? Luangpor: she's 80. Question: And what about your father, is he still alive? Luangpor: My father died when I was still small. It would be good if he had still been alive. He was a very serious and good person, everyone in the family and the village accepted, loved, and respected him. He had no enemies. He thought in good ways, it's too bad he died. Question: How many children do you have? Luangpor: Just one. When I took ordination my wife was 4 months pregnant. Question: Was it very hard to make that decision? Luangpor: At first I was only 50% sure about what to do. I was worried about it and what people in the village would think of it. I am not a bad or low kind of person. The villagers respect me because I use my life in a way that is worthy. I'm not lazy and I'm not detested by society. People used to respect me because I was a magical healer. If a woman was pregnant in our village, people would say in a straightforward way, "Don't go off anywhere, stay at home and be a refuge to her." Because of this I was worried, and I was only 50% sure. But as soon as I understood the basic stage of Dhamma, I was sure 100% and not worried about anything. I knew that this was the right path. The reason to go and practice was to be able to be responsible. Now I could teach people to use their lives in this way. If I was the head of a family, I would love just my wife, children, and relatives. But now I don't love just them, I feel responsible for all human beings in the world. And so I decided that this was the right thing to do. No arguments could sway me. I have been confident up to the present day. I have been a monk for over 20 years, and I'm still confident that there is nothing about it that is wrong or is a mistake. Question: Did you care for nature very much before you realized the Dhamma? Because now you are engaged with this aspect too, such as preserving forests. Luangpor: Not at all. This arose afterwards, when I understood nature. I don't just love humanity, I love nature, I love the environment. A sense of responsibility arose for all things. I used to be someone who cleared the forest in order to be a farmer. I would uproot trees and burn the forest in the winter. But when my mind came in contact with nature, a sense of responsibility and love for nature, trees, and human beings arose. Since then there has been fairness. Question: Things just changed forever on that day, is it? Luangpor: Everything completely changed. From knowing Rupanama, knowing nature, and knowing convention, a sense of love for nature arose. I got interested in forests, and because of that I am now surrounded by forest. I see the value of nature. Trees are alive, you can almost talk to them. Question: Do you mean that trees are in a way the same as oneself? Luangpor: That's what I mean. They are completely harmless. All things are born as friends without exception. We are all friends in birth, old age, sickness, and death. From that day up to the present, I have never harmed anybody or anything. Even if someone abuses or kills me, never mind. Question: You told me that your health was not good before, but after you realized the Dhamma it got better. How did the Dhamma help you? Luangpor: I can see clearly that my good health is a result of understanding Dhamma. When one understands Dhamma, one knows how to use one's life in the right way. I used to have trouble with my stomach. Now it is back to normal. I would like to say that if I didn't get to know the Dhamma, I would probably be dead now, because I'm a very serious person. I want more than other people do. For example, others would harvest 50 bags of rice in a day, but I have to make it 100 bags. I always wanted more than others, and that made me ill and sick. If I hadn't come to the practice I would have been dead now. If I had used my life as I did before, what would have become of me? This is one of the fruits of developing awareness and realizing the Dhamma. The Dhamma inevitably protects the body and mind, it keeps them safe and leads them towards freedom. Question: did you feel changes in your body? Luangpor: I could feel and see it all clearly. Not just health matters, but also things deeper than that I used to have and be. Those things disappeared. I don't serve the problems of the body anymore. I'm no longer a slave of the body, rather, I use the body as my servant. The mind is the same. Before, I served the mind, now I use the mind. Before the mind used me. Things changed around. To give an example, heat, cold, and hunger used to be powerful, defilements and craving were powerful, they would concoct a lot, but now they don't have any power at all. I use them. There is no problem with the body or the mind. I will remain like this, right here. No matter how many years, no matter what may happen to the world and society, I will abide right at this point. There won't be birth, no aging, no sickness, no heat, no cold, no hunger, no happiness and no suffering. I will be here, right here, where there is nothing to be, nothing to have. Question: I have heard Luangpor Teean say that, a few minutes before death everybody will experience the same point, that you just described. What is the meaning of that? Luangpor: there is a place. It is as if our bodies have a place, a home. When it rains, do you stay outside, soaking? Where do you go? When it rains we have to avoid it and find a shelter. When it's hot, do you go and sit in the blazing sun? The body won't agree to that. It wants to get out of there. The mind of someone who has trained well in developing awareness is even more so. When there is awareness, when one is aware, an inclination to get angry arises but anger doesn't arise, an inclination to suffer arises but suffering doesn't arise, the mind won't go for it. Whoever may try to make it angry, it won't go for it. Even to have a tiny bit of suffering, it won't go for it. The mind lets go. The mind likes to abide right here. This is the way nature works. But if we don't train ourselves, it is the nature of the mind to run into suffering. The more anger the better. It keeps thinking about it. But when we know, the mind won't go for it. Question: this shows that the mind has returned to its original state, is that correct? Luangpor: it has returned to its original state, to its home, to its hideout. It won't go anywhere else. When there is pain, the mind won't be in pain. When things arise, nothing arises in the mind. When things deteriorate, nothing happens in the mind. This means, the mind won't go out and be these things. When one is about to die, how can the mind agree to then die? Birth, aging, sickness and death are arts. If these things didn't exist, the Dhamma would have no purpose. This is what religion is all about. If one doesn't talk about these things, it is not a matter of Buddhism. Therefore we should watch and see, let there be hunger, pain, and birth, the mind is not any of it. The mind is beyond birth, aging and death. It is not a matter of crying for help, when we're about to die, please take me to the hospital. Rather look upon death as an art, an opportunity in life. We don't surrender to suffering, we look beyond, overlook, suffering. We don't surrender to anger, there is such a thing as non-anger. It is safe to abide at this place, why would we let ourselves get trampled by suffering or anger? That which is beyond anger, happiness, suffering, birth, pain and death, does exist. The Dhamma is nature. The mind returns to nature, goes back home. It is like being at home, we feel at ease, we are with those we know. And so, with the Dhamma we are perfect. There is nothing unfortunate, there is no inability to deal with things, such as anger, pain, and suffering. One is not a servant, one is free, one is safe. This is the way the Dhamma is. To go and practice at the monastery after anger has already arisen, is not the right way to do it. Whenever it arises, cut it. And look at it. Look further. Don't give in to it. Look beyond the anger. Do it like this. You must build up awareness. If we don't cultivate awareness, we won't have it. Question: I know that you are by nature very refined in everything. Is that your original character, or did it come about after your experience? Luangpor: for as long as I can remember, I have never blamed myself for anything, or had thoughts that made me remorseful. This is an old habit of mine. I have never created trouble for myself or others to the point of regret. I still had suffering, but not to the extent that I had problems with other people. When I came to understand things, I was able to smile. So I am sure that I've lived my life in the right way, or it might also be that my character has helped me too. I think that one has to create one's own environment. Just to rely on effort and diligence is not enough. One should create coolness of mind, the ability not to suffer easily. While practicing, feel that it doesn't matter whether or not you know it all yet. Let the mind be contented. This is also an important point. Just to be diligent in the walking and rhythmic meditation alone doesn't work. There are certain good things about me. My mind has always been cool. I've never argued with anybody, I am not impulsive. And so I can manage. Actually, I used to have problems with myself, but never mind. Because of suffering I put up a struggle. It was a lesson in unrelenting endurance to fight with suffering and hardship. My father died when I was a kid, and I had to overcome obstacles and take on responsibilities. I struggled and economized, I restrained myself and kept cool. This is my background. It would be good if you had some of these qualities too. Don't be impulsive, don't be in a hurry, don't be flurried. First think, never mind. Make this your base. Whether you gain or lose, whether it's right or wrong, never mind. You still have a chance to deal with things, namely by living in the right way. Living in the right way doesn't mean to go and live in a monastery. You can live anywhere. Stay relaxed and equanimous, then there is no suffering. This is the kind of person who is fit to realize the Dhamma. If the mind goes up and down and is not refined or gentle, it is not qualified. This is another aspect of practicing Dhamma. Question: does this original state of the mind already exist in all beings? Luangpor: it is the nature of everyone. If you don't get to this point, it is not right, it is not finished, no matter what you may know or where you may be. This state is nature, it is a treasure that belongs to all of us. Right now, we are not one with nature. I don't know where we have gone off to. Sometimes we feel lonely, sometimes we are worried. This indicates that we are estranged from our real home, which is the state of normality. Whatever someone may say, we must know ourselves. We don't do anything unwholesome, we don't defile our minds. When the mind is free from harm, it becomes pure by itself. Others may or may not know about it, but we know for ourselves. We can guarantee that we won't harm anyone. But there is still the convention of speech. I can still scold and reproach novices, but the words are one thing and my mind is another. I may tell somebody off, but there is still loving kindness in my mind. The reproach is on a deeper level, a kind of loving kindness. I scold, wishing well, not through a negative mind state. It can even be lovely speech, It doesn't mean, so and so, I love you. That may not be lovely at all. Rather, it is saying, so and so, don't do that, it is wrong. This is lovely speech. When something is wrong, it has to be pointed out. Question: all of us who have been born are alive just to reach this day. Luangpor: just that. Understand it like that. Don't get involved with things, it just makes a mess. It's better to know this when you're still young. Don't let suffering punish you for not knowing. See suffering in order not to be caught up in it, see anger in order not to be caught in anger. Don't stay with the anger, don't stay with the suffering. A buffalo that falls in the mud knows how to get out, but why do people not know how to get out of things when they get caught up? Why do they allow themselves to sink down for days on end? One should come out of impurity. The more skilled one is, the more it becomes an art. Then, it's easy not to be angry, not to do things. This is what a practitioner is like. Even the body knows when fire touches it, it'll brush it off immediately. But our minds don't know. When we don't know in time, our minds go for it, they run straight into suffering. For example, when we think that anger is a good thing, when we feel good abusing, or killing somebody, the mood goes into the mind. It's like this chair. I'm sitting in it, and so nobody else can sit here. Question: in reality, we have been wandering around in order to come back to our starting point, our origin. It's just that we need different amounts of time, isn't it? Luangpor: yes, but those who don't know completely lose direction. They agree to be slaves to the whole thing. They let the defilements have tremendous power. In reality, defilements are nothing. There is no self in them. There is nothing powerful about them. When we know things as they are, the impurities line up to confess, no need to search for them. This makes us realize what convention is. We see that this is the suffering of Rupa, this is the suffering of Nama, this is the disease of Rupa and of Nama, the convention of Rupa and Nama. We are just the watcher, and they come and show themselves. When we have sharp eyes or wisdom knowledge, insight knowledge or awareness and wisdom, satipatthana, we will see. I don't talk from the scriptures, I talk from nature. I don't know what is written in the scriptures, but I would like to say it like this. When you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to suffer. Not getting what one wants doesn't have to be suffering. You should view it like this. Whatever the body is like, there doesn't have to be suffering. Whatever feelings arise, there doesn't have to be suffering. This is because we change their direction, we take suffering as a lesson rather than a punishment. When we examine it, we'll see it crystal clear. We see it clearly from Rupa Nama, to the suffering of Rupa and Nama, to the disease of Rupa and Nama. Seeing, here, doesn't mean knowing intellectually or having a view about it, it is a real discovery, and the result is that conditions can no longer fool us. One has no more doubt, even if they arise 100 or 1,000 times. We see their nature, we use nature to understand things. We should be grateful for suffering and anger, because we have been their servants since we were small. Now that we see the disadvantages, we return these things to nature. Question: after you had final knowledge, you helped villagers with their way of living, you were active preserving the forest, and you went to teach meditation abroad. Did Luangpor Teean support you in doing these things, or did he want you to stay with him? Luangpor: he supported me. But the way I see it is that for those who go to the monastery, there is no problem. As for those who are not yet thinking to go to the monastery, I see them from another angle. The monastery where I stay, Sukatho Forest Monastery, Chayapam Province, may be different from what Sanamnai, the monastery where Luangpor Teean used to stay, close to Bangkok. Lots of people used to go to Sanamnai Monastery, that's good. At Wat Pa Sukatho, I helped the villagers. I established a center for children, because there was a need for it. At first I didn't teach Dhamma because the people there didn't understand me. In order for them to understand me, I had to live with them and prove myself. I found something to do, I can't be idle. To just teach Dhamma wouldn't reach them, I had to teach in another way. I taught the villagers to plant trees and care for nature. Sometimes I would help little children and poor people. Some people say that I should go and stay in Bangkok. Why do I stay in a forest like this? I think that there is no problem in Bangkok, people are already going to the monasteries. But what about those people who have no intention to go? It is necessary for them to come into contact with the Dhamma. And so, I use my life in this way. Question: it seems that it is more difficult where you are than in the city, because you have to struggle with people's ignorance. Luangpor: it's very difficult, I have to fight with people's views. That's a heavy job and the results are few. But now it's a little better. The people in the area come from different places and backgrounds. Some had been in prison, some were refugees and were without a future. It's impossible to make people from other places love our country in the same way we do. Sometimes people would chase and kill each other like buffaloes. In the past, the monastery was full of gamblers. The first year I was there, I would clean the meditation hall and collect a whole pile of whiskey bottles. One part of my life is about looking after and preserving nature. Nature has been destroyed so much already. We have to try to nurture and care for it. I have to teach the villagers and make them understand. They have to realize the importance of nature and the forests. Another part of my life is to teach the Dhamma, to teach meditation.
May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease.